Hello and welcome to part 18 of the Johnny Blender 2.0 series. We just created our eyeball and texture for it in the previous section. So in this section we'll go ahead and tweak it just a little bit, and then maybe we'll get in and start working with some particle hair. So let's go ahead and zoom in the front view, and I noticed when I rendered it out the eyeballs still seemed a little bit too far forward. Go ahead and center those up. So let's drag those back into the eye sockets a little bit more. Okay, and when I rendered, let's render it one more time, just see what it's looking like here. Take it a second. The SSS subsurface scattering likes to take a couple of seconds to render out. Okay, now like I said before, they look a little cartoonish here, so let's see what we can do to try to fix that a little bit. Let's change some of the settings over here in the subsurface scattering. Let's change this, for example, put that a little bit more of a tan color, maybe a little bit darker. Kind of keep an eye on what it's doing up here. And if we set the blend texture here, set that up, it's going to kind of blur this a little bit. Maybe that'll help give it a little bit more organic feel. So set the scale down a little bit, and maybe the back is too much. Let's put that 1.5, and let's go ahead and save. And you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and change the lighting just a little bit again. Sometimes it's the lighting that makes a huge difference. Go ahead and save, and let's take a look at this. Okay, I think that looks a lot better. One thing that might be affecting it also is the clear coat that we have on it, basically the lens. The index of refraction might be a little bit too high, so let's go back down in here under the transparency settings, and let's change that to 0. Basically 0 is 1.0. That's nothing being refracted. Let's try, it was at 1.5 before, let's 1.2. Man, that still looks maybe too high. Let's do 1.15 there. Okay, and now let's go ahead and save that, and now let's take another peek, see what it looks like. I'll go ahead and zoom out. Looks like it zoomed in a little bit earlier. Okay, that's a little bit better, I think. Might be a little cross-eyed looking. But, okay. So anyways, we'll call the eyeballs done for now. Might tweak them a little bit later on. Let's go ahead and save. Actually, I just saved over my 17. Oh no! That's no big deal. I just, the only thing I changed was a few settings here, so... Tell you what I'll do. I'll go ahead and save as part 18. I'll still save it in the same folder as 17, but it'll be a totally different file. So I'll go ahead and save. Okay, now we get into some fun parts. So let's go ahead and merge these two together. We're done with the texturing for now. What we want to add now is some particle hair. And first thing I want to add is the eyebrows. Let's go ahead and add those. So let's scroll over here to the little sparkly looking thing there, and that's our particles. Make sure we got our head model selected. We'll go ahead and add a particle system. Let's go ahead and name this brows, okay, and set the emitter type to hair. You can see it puts these lines coming out everywhere. That's basically our strands of hair. Which this would be fine if you're doing an animal that has a lot of fur or something, but I want to be able to control this a lot better. So I'm going to set the amount down to, just for right now, let's put it at 50. So we can still see some, and we can control, we can still see some previews of how the hair, the length of it and everything. So let's set the velocity down. The normal is the length of the hair. So if we change that down to smaller, you can see the hair getting shorter. And if this is going to be eyebrows, it needs to be pretty short. And it just went down to 0. Don't want it totally 0. So about 0.04 puts it about that long, maybe a little bit longer. It's 0.05. So there we go. And now we'll set the amount to 0. And that took all the hair off. And you're thinking, well, how are we going to have any hair if we took it down to 0? Well, there's something you can do with that. Just go Object, actually go to Particle mode here, right there. And we'll go over here and we'll go to Add. Now, one thing we need to check before we start doing anything else is turn on X Mirror right here. And so now that we've selected Add, it's going to add a hair whenever we click and draw, click and drag. So now I'm just painting in the eyebrows. And so you have a lot more control of where they're going when you do it this way. And you can see it's automatically doing it on both sides. So let's go ahead and draw this guy in here. And right now it's putting on there one at a time. Now you can change that if you like. Say count up to, if you go 5, it's going to add 5 of them at a time. So that might save you some time if you wanted to do that way. Go ahead and drag in here. Sounds like I'm getting some thunder outside. Okay, so we'll just put in particles right there. Just paint those in. Come out and you can kind of see what it's going to look like now. My brows coming together a little closer than that. Sometimes too close. Got to break out the tweezers. But anyways. Okay, so we got our particles there, but they don't look very natural at all. So let's grab the comb right here. And now we'll just start clicking and dragging and making it in the shape of eyebrows. Hopefully I can finish this tutorial before it starts storming. Don't want to lose anything. Okay, you can spend a lot of time detailing that if you want to. Okay, so now that's basically some decent looking eyebrows, I guess. Let's go back to object mode. And if we render now, it's really not going to look very good because we don't have our particles, the color of our particles set up the way it should be. So you can see them, and they're basically just inheriting the surface or the mesh below them, its color and settings and everything, and you can see it doesn't look real at all. So let's go ahead and escape out of that render, and let's start setting up our eyebrow material. Excuse me. The way we do that, go to our material settings, and let's go ahead and add a new one, and let's go ahead and delete that and create a new one there, and let's call this we'll call this brows / lashes, because we'll use the same texture on our eyelashes when we draw those on. Okay, so let's go to our texture settings here and add a new one, and it's going to be a blend right there, and go ahead and collapse that and expand the colors and turn on ramp and set this color to white, or excuse me, to black, and click on the show alpha so we can see what we're doing here. And I want to, this for the most part would work, but I need to set this one to be a little bit less solid. So let's put it down fairly far. Just put it at about 0.25. Okay, now you can't really see it here in the viewport, but that's okay. It's going to do what it needs to do. So we'll go ahead and collapse colors, and this time go to mapping, and now instead of UV or anything else, we're going to go to strand. And then go ahead and collapse that. And since eyebrows are typically dark and eyelashes also are dark, we'll just leave it set to the color. And then also we need to have it set to the alpha right there. And now we'll go back to the material settings, And they're right here, these three little lines here, that's basically our hair preview. So we need to go down to transparency, go ahead and turn that on, run alpha all the way down to 0. You can barely see those hairs there, but don't worry, they're going to render. They'll show up. But the blend that we just created is going to control the transparency of the hairs. Now another thing you need to do on the hairs to kind of control how they're going to look is we'll go to the strand settings right here. And you've got size of the root and the tip. Now the root is obviously the part that's attached to the head, and then the tip is going to be, you know, the tapered edge. So let's go ahead and run that all the way down to 0.25, and then the root, it can be smaller too. Let's put it at 0.5. It's starting to storm. I better hurry up. Okay, so now we need to go to our particle settings and tell it to use that second material that we have applied to our model. So we right here under render settings, click over one to material 2. So we'll go ahead and save this and go F12. And now it should render our eyebrows with that nice dark color. Now since they're really transparent, we might need to do some work and thicken them up some. And another thing is they're really shiny, but you can see them on there now. They're not the same color as the skin. So let's go ahead and escape out of that render. Back to our material settings. And on speculars, let's run that down. And let's set the intensity way down to about 0.15. That'd be fine. And the hardness, we can set that, well, we can just leave it at 50. That'll probably work fine. Now, in order to thicken up the eyelashes, we can do a couple of different things. First of all, we can go back to our settings here and change our color ramp right there, make it a little bit more opaque. So let's put that at 0.5. And you know, I'm going to go save this, and let's go ahead and run this up a little bit here. And I find if you also put some transparency at the very tip, or the very root of it, I'll go ahead and set another piece there, it kind of helps dissolve out from the skin a little bit better, if that makes sense. It seems to look a little bit more natural. Maybe make this a little bit darker. There you go. Okay, now another thing we can do, and this is actually going to add more particles to it, and this is very important. One thing that you can do to help speed things up, it'll help save a lot of RAM, is to turn on the strand render. You can also choose B-spline, but I haven't really found that changes a whole lot. But strand render is very important. So let's go ahead and collapse that, and let's go to children. Now what this is going to do, it's going to add basically copies of each of these strands. It's going to add a child to it. And basically we're doubling all of our eyebrow particles, excuse me, without actually doubling the particles. This is like just they're generated through each one. So anyways, so we want to set this to particles. You can see, boom, it automatically adds 10. In our display here, it's adding 10 children for every particles there. And it's going to render 100, so we don't want it to render that many. It's going to be way too much. Okay, so what it's doing is it's taking those particles and it's copying these children around them. So we need to say not quite so far. So about 0.1 would be fine. And then the roundness, we can play with that. Maybe not too high. And let's change this display down to, let's try 2, and then also, or actually 3. Let's try 3 in the render also. Now they're kind of bushing out, which is a little bit too much. So let's try 0.05. And if you zoom in, you can kind of see where they're doubling themselves. So let's go ahead and save this. And now we can render out a test, and it should look quite a bit better. probably way too thick now. So let's tweak this just a little bit. It's going to escape out. Let's set this down to 2 instead of 3. And then let's go into our material settings, and it looked like it was way too shiny. So let's bring the hardness down. And then the intensity also. Okay. And now the hair itself is going to need to throw shadows, but our eyebrows and our eyelashes don't really need to. So let's go ahead and go down to the shadow settings here and go ahead and turn those off. Okay. So now go ahead and save. And let's do one more test render. And now they're too sparse. And I think actually what I did with the specular is I need to make that higher, because when it's lower it kind of just does a dull sheen across it, and it makes it a lot bigger. So if I make it a lot harder, it'll have a smaller shine to it. Sorry about that, I hit the microphone. Go ahead and save that. Let's take a look at this again. Just F11 to bring up the preview there. And for the most part it's looking okay. Let's go ahead and bump that up to back up to 3 here. And then we'll go to our material settings here, and let's lower the opacity here back down. About let's do 0.2 on this particular one, then go here and set that to 0.4. And there we go. So let's go ahead and save this. And now we'll go ahead and render. And hopefully it'll look pretty decent now. Well, obviously it could still use some work, but for now I'm going to call that done, because like I said, it's starting to storm outside, and might ought to go ahead and shut down. So that's the eyebrows. Like I said, we might go ahead and tweak them a little bit more later on, but that's going to be all for part 18. And the next part we'll go ahead and do like I said, we'll tweak the eyebrows and go ahead and get in and do the eyelashes, and then depending on how long that takes, we might go ahead and do the hair. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in part 19.